John, just to add to that, part of the race to the top, the problem with Nevada's failing to get it was that there isn't some more uniformity between the local organizations within the state as far as education.
Well, that is a very minor part of it, though, Sam. The reason we didn't get the race to the top funding is because we fund education so pathetically in this state, and we don't have a culture that respects education in this state, and that was evident, and that's why we didn't get any of that money.
You win. Come on, yeah, you have a question.
I was just wondering your opinion on how long judges should serve on those appointments. The length of time, if there's some kind of, if they should be term limited. What are you feeling on that?
I'm against term limits, and I'm on the record on that too. I think term limits is an artificial solution, and it's a placebo, and it will not do a thing. As far as judges go, 4-year terms are fine with me. I think you can't make them too short, you can't make them too long. I do think that there could be a problem with the way that this advisory question, not advisory, because this question is written with the 2 years and then a 55% retention. I don't know if that's long enough, and I think 55% might be too high a bar.
So you're saying maybe that the premise of not electing judges is good, but maybe the legislation could use some tweaking.
I do.
Maybe?
Thank you for the translation. I often need that, Sam.
I have trouble with translations. You won the first one. I had to get even.
About 100 years ago, when Teddy Roosevelt and the Progressives tried to figure out how to get rid of the corruption of the Gilded Age, they were the ones that came up with the initiative and the referendum and the recall. They were the ones that came up with direct election of judges because they felt that grassroots direct democracy was an antidote for corruption. We have now gone 100 years away from that and have found that in some instances they were correct, but that in many instances they put too much faith in the voters and expected that voters were really going to participate and be civic-minded, which is not played out. So what do we do now? What's the new antidote for the corruption and the problem we have where we have elected boards that maybe shouldn't be elected? Or is there a solution, a set of things that we could be doing that the same way the Progressives did 100 years ago?
The answer to your question is yes, but do you know what you need? You need thoughtful, persuasive, passionate leaders to lead the public, and that is what we're lacking these days. Instead, what we have are people who are appealing to the basest instincts of the American electorate, who are trying to incite and inflame passions through the worst kind of demagoguery. To say things that they either can't prove or sound good to people. Oh, that must be why things are occurring. And no one's really willing, because they're afraid of the passions of the electorate, to stand up to them. And that's the problem, is that people are afraid to go out and educate the public as to what the truth is. And it's happening nationally in a lot of these elections for the U.S. Senate. It's happening here in an election for the U.S. Senate. It's happening even at a more insidious level in the race for governor here, when you have two candidates for governor who are purposely lying because they don't want to get the public to feel the public's wrath if they tell the truth about what the state's budget problems really are. And so it cycles on itself, and then they try to do something, but by then the public is so mad that they seem to be changing their position from what they had, that they don't want to listen. And then they go to some of these procedures you've talked about. Let's recall them, let's impeach them, let's go to a ballot question to stop this from ever happening again. I mean, two of the worst ballot questions that have ever passed in this state, in my opinion, are the 120-day limitation on the legislature, which is completely arbitrary and does exactly the opposite of what the legislature is intended to do, which is to be a deliberative body, and the 2/3 majority to raise taxes, which gives immense power to a minority, which goes against everything. You don't have to go back 100 years. Let's go back a lot longer than that. Goes against everything that the founding fathers in this country believed in. So, but it's popular, and you can inflame passions without any logic, and that's what's much more disturbing to me. So, people tune out, they get mad, and they're blindly angry, hateful. They believe almost anything that has just a patina of truth to it, and it's very, very frightening. And it's something that frustrates me as someone who covers politics. You try to cut through it, and people put ads on the air that are patently false, and I go on my program and do what we call reality checks on them, and the number of people who see that, unfortunately, is about 1/1000th, 100,000th of the people who see all the ads. So, you know, every person needs to do their small part to get informed, but if you don't have leaders who are willing to inform, it just won't happen. You know, Teddy Roosevelt was a unique figure, right? Teddy Roosevelt had brains and chutzpah.
Yeah.
How many leaders can you say that about these days? How many?
Isn't the problem, though, that we have had many intellectual leaders, some really, really great leaders, but the United States citizens usually reject them. They call them eggheads, they call them above us, they call them elitists, they call them who knows what, and therefore all the politicians end up trying to appeal to the passions and the emotions of the people, and they reject their own intelligence because the common masses do the rejection. What can we do about that?
Jerry Brown's coming back.
Well, what you said is right. I mean, you're right. That's why someone like Adlai Stevenson was rejected, and as you mentioned, called an egghead. But you mentioned Teddy Roosevelt. She mentioned Teddy Roosevelt. He had brains and passion. Why are they mutually exclusive? Right? Why are they? And so, if everyone just takes the position that you have to appeal to the heart rather than the head, then you're going to get nowhere. So, unfortunately, it's not as simple a solution as finding those kinds of people, because the system is set up to discourage people like that from running. Right?
Yeah.
That's how it's set up. So you have to change the system, and that's not easy to do. That is not easy to do. And what frightens me more is that it's going more and more and more that way. And it's the worst kinds of passions are out there now, especially with the election of the first African American president in this country's history, which sowed the seeds for some of what started. It's now gone way beyond that in terms of what the Tea Party actually is. And there are a lot, by the way, there are a lot of very, very good people in the Tea Party. Very good people. Most of them, see, that's just ridiculous, Naomi. It's the people on the left are just as intolerant. That's the problem. The Tea Party, a lot of the folks in the Tea Party are just people who are mad because their economic lot has suffered, and they don't understand what's really going on in Washington because it's impenetrable to most people, and it looks like some Byzantine system of government that's unrecognizable to what was just set up, and they're mad. They're mad as hell, right? And they don't want to take it anymore. They don't know why. They don't understand things. And so that's how people are appealing to the Tea Party. They're appealing to the inherent ignorance of what's really caused the problems. A kind of ignorance that says the stimulus obviously hasn't worked because unemployment is so high, without looking at the complicated economic situation that was inherited by this administration, and that without something like that, it might be much worse, and that maybe they should have spent more money, which is what a lot of economists think. How do you think that's going to go over?
John, what do you think, and I know you're on the record, campaign finance reform, there's some bill drafts that are being formulated this time, even on a state level. So do you think this would maybe address some of the questions?
I think campaign finance reform is needed, but I've come full circle on this whole question since I started covering politics. I essentially believe that limits don't work, that there's always going to be loopholes with outside groups able to spend money because of the First Amendment and because of the Supreme Court's position on money essentially equaling speech equaling money, all the Buckley versus Vallejo, for those of you lawyers in the room and familiar with that decision. So I believe in one thing now, and one thing only, and that is disclosure.
Okay.
An immediate disclosure of contributions spending on the internet. If the time period is 24, 48, 72 hours, that doesn't matter to me much. But if Bank of America wants to contribute $2 million to some person who's running for the State Board of Education, I don't think that's as egregious as it not being disclosed immediately, and people can then judge. Is she going to be in the pocket of Bank of America for $2 million? Is that her price, or is it much lower? Or higher? So I just think that anybody who resists the immediate disclosure on the internet, you ask them why. And they come up with all kinds of, well, some people in the rural counties might not have computers. Give me a break. So that should be enacted right away. I'm going to be really interested to see how some of those bills do in the legislature. Okay?
Hey there.
We're not talking about the State Board of Education again, are we, Jan? Please tell me no.
I'll tell you no, but then I'm going to put my foot into it.
No, wait.
Okay. How do we teach the democratic process is the way we get people's representation if we are appointed. So that's my stand. What would you have done different if you were conducting the debates between the senators?
Well, I don't like the format. The format was the problem. The format restricted anything that could happen. It's essentially set up in certain time blocks to answer, and then a rebuttal for every question. If you restrict it like that, you're always going to allow the candidates to fill that time with whatever they want to fill that time with. You should never have time restrictions. You should have a moderator who's aggressive in keeping people on the topic, and when they say something that's utter fantasy, calling them on it until they actually answer it. That is why when I have debates on my program, and some people in this room have been on my program in debates, there are no rules. You have to debate. The key to any good debate, in my opinion, is a moderator who knows the subject matter as well as the candidates, or at least almost as well, and maybe in some cases better. So that person can really pin them down, or know when they're just trying to fill time with nonsense. That format was set up in a very restrictive way, and that's why they both were there, because neither of those candidates want to be in that kind of situation, I assure you.
Hi. I'm reading about untraceable funds. What does that mean, and how can campaign funding? They're coming up with untraceable funds now, and I don't know how we get around it, because this is pretty scary, and nobody seems to know where this stuff is coming from.
Well, when you're talking about untraceable funds, you're talking with some of these groups that have been set up and are spending money on TV, but they don't have to disclose their donors, correct? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. Because there's a loophole. If you're a nonprofit, you don't have to disclose certain things, which is why American Crossroads, which is the group that was set up by Karl Rove and Ed Gillespie, set up an adjunct called American Crossroads GPS, which is a nonprofit, and they don't have to disclose their donors based on the current law. Again, all I care about in these cases is transparency. Everyone who spends money in campaign should have to disclose where that money is coming from. Then people can make their own decisions based on that.
Think that'll ever come through?
No.
National League is fighting for that, and every time they send out an alert, we should all be responding.
And they're getting the alerts.
Can I stand up and not ask a question again?
No.
Sam's the boss.
No, I just get to play with the mic. What? We don't pontificate, but if we do, we have any other questions? Because I did have Aaron ask John if he would please kind of run through the ballot questions really quickly as a summary.
We've gone through all of them. We've gone
So
through all of them
Aaron,
already.
are you okay with that? Or do you have a
Oh, I'm not
No,
telling you how to
he can't
vote.
tell you how to
I'm not
vote.
telling you how to vote.
That would be disclosure.
If I told everybody how to vote and they listened to me, it'd be a much better world, but I'm not going to do it.
No, I think he is right, he went through them. The judges, the appellate, the pistol, we kind of went through.
Are we going to start seeing articles about them, pro and con, in the newspapers and around? I mean, people are voting already, and there has been nothing. If you Google them, there's nothing.
In your photo guide.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I know. We know in this room kind of what's going on, but I'm telling you, there's just people don't know.
I don't run a newspaper.
I know. Are you?
I wish I did, but they will certainly have articles. They'll probably be not very